Hey everyone, I'm Shaylin here with Reedsy. Today we're here with Trope Detective number 3. This is a series where we take a look at tropes, do a little bit of a dig into them, get your opinions, and just have a chat about a specific trope. Someone suggested that we do a video on the Manic Pixie dream girl trope, and I think this is a really interesting trope. This is one that I was wanting to take a look at, so I'm really glad it was requested. So today we're going to take a look at this very interesting trope. It has a very interesting history, and there's just a lot to discuss with this trope. The Manic Pixie Dream Girl trope is an overly quirky, full of life character, usually a woman, whose only purpose in the story is to help a usually male character find purpose in his life. But she's never given any goals or development of her own. She's often recognizable by her exuberantly quirky personality, often kind of a pseudo-intellectual side to her. Maybe she reads Keats in a field and makes her own kombucha, which I do that, so maybe I shouldn't use that as an example. She has an overpowering love for rhubarb donuts or some other weird niche food that no one really cares about. She has bright pink hair and recites haikus and has a hand-painted Vespa. I don't know. Other kind of ridiculous things like that. She's often extroverted, buoyant, philosophical, romantic, eccentric, and often functions as a romantic interest for the protagonist. This character doesn't have to be a woman, but usually she is, and the trope was originally defined in reference to female characters specifically. This is what people often take as the defining qualities of the Manic Pixie Dream Girl. These very eccentric, weird, over-the-top qualities about her. And these things usually do exist within her character, but they're not really what ultimately defines the trope. You can have an over-the-top, quirky female character who is not a Manic Pixie Dream Girl. Ultimately, the crux of this trope is that it's a character who only exists to give another character purpose in their life, but never gets goals or development or a journey of their own. Now, often right at the end of the story, she'll be like revealed to have a traumatic backstory or something like that before she kind of disappears into the sunset forever and we never hear about her again. Again, it's kind of just an illusion of depth. A really interesting part of this trope is that the way that she is often written is kind of ways of giving her fake depth, giving her pseudo depth, so the reader feels that they're reading a very deep character, but they ultimately aren't. All of the weird quirks make her feel complex, make her feel like there's a lot to her. We get a sad backstory for her at the very end, which gives her kind of like, makes us sympathize with her, but ultimately there really isn't anything under the surface or any kind of cohesive personality. Her over-the-top quirkiness is like a disguise to hide the fact that underneath all of these eccentricities, she doesn't have any actual character development. There is kind of a lure to this character. The audience can feel it, and the lead, usually male character, feels it as well. Her quirkiness and zeal for life feels very overpowering next to the protagonist's dullness. Basically, because she's weird, she has an illusion of complexity, when really in the end, she's quite one-dimensional. So let's talk a little about the history of this trope, because it's a fairly recent trope. It was defined in 2005 by film critic Nathan Rabin. He initially defined this trope in response to Kirsten Dunst's character in the film Elizabethtown. He coined the term and defined the Manic Pixie Dream Girl as a character who exists solely in the fevered imagination of sensitive writer-directors to teach broodingly soulful young men to embrace life and its infinite mysteries and adventures. Here he defines pretty clearly what the key element of this trope is that it's not really about any of the weird quirks she has specifically, it's that she's there to give another character a zeal and appreciation for life. And for me, a problem does kind of arise when generally people don't see the trope for what it is. And it ends up being kind of ironic because what happens is that actually genuinely interesting and well-written female characters end up getting called Manic Pixie Dream Girls just because they're a little quirky or exuberant. The term has actually been criticized. For example, Zoe Kazan has criticized the term, saying that to lump together all individual, original, quirky women under this rubric is to erase all difference. It went through kind of an interesting evolution. Rabin himself has actually apologized for creating the term and has even said that he regrets creating it. He says that because he gave a vague definition in the beginning, the term has been used for more bad than it has been for good. His retraction of the term is based on this ironic, unintended consequence where a term that he originally coined to comment on a misogynistic trend in character writing has then ultimately been used to condemn well-written female characters. He's even said that a nuanced character cannot be classified as a Manic Pixie Dream Girl because by definition the character is not a nuanced or well-developed one. He's even apologized to pop culture for creating what he has called an unstoppable monster in coining this term. I do think it's helpful to have a word for this type of character because it is a character that we see quite a lot, and it's good to be able to identify why the character isn't a well-written or interesting one. So I asked you guys for your opinions on this trope. Unlike in the past, where I think there was a lot to say and kind of good examples to be given and bad examples to be given, there's not as much to say on this trope because it's typically not a trope that people see and are like, sometimes it can be done well, sometimes it's not. It's usually a trope that by definition is a poorly written character. We didn't get as many responses for this one as of yet. However, there is one comment that I thought is pretty interesting. Erica Roth says, I recently read a comment someone made about Manic Pixie Dream Girls and it really stood out to me. Every poorly written female character isn't a Manic Pixie Dream Girl, but every fully fledged Manic Pixie Dream Girl is a poorly written female character. In my opinion, this trope is pretty different from others. A lot of other tropes, we can say that it's done well in this case, it's not done well in this case. We can find good examples of it, bad examples of it. We might say, oh, it's a little tired. This trope, however, is a little different because this trope is, in essence, a critique. It's a critique more than it is an element of story. And for that reason, I don't think it's possible to have a well-written Manic Pixie Dream Girl. The definition of the trope is that she's not well-written. But I think it's totally possible to have a very quirky character, one who has some of these kind of external characteristics of a lot of Manic Pixie Dream Girls, be a well-developed and interesting character. I actually like quirky characters. I think they can be really fun. I think there are a lot of quirky people in this world, so I don't see a problem with having a quirkier character. As long as the character is given depth and ambition to make them actually a genuinely interesting character and a reflection of a real person. I would love to hear what you think about this trope. Any examples that you find are kind of interesting. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos from us. We have new writing, editing, and publishing videos every Tuesday and Friday. Until next time.